Good morning.
Good morning.
It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashua. I am Reverend Allison Palm, and I serve as the minister here. Our church resides in Niswaok, place of two rivers, now called Nashua, in Indakina, the sacred unceded homelands and waterways stewarded by the Pennacook, Abenaki, and Wabanaki peoples for hundreds of generations. Our UU Church of Nashua is a welcoming community of faith, inspiring lives of wonder, generosity, and courage, and serving our world through love in action. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. I want to offer a special welcome to any guests or newcomers who are with us. We're so glad that you've joined us and hope that you stick around for our fellowship time after the service. Those of you on Zoom will be put in a breakout room for that fellowship time for connection and conversation, and those of you here in person are welcome to head into the dining room for in-person fellowship. Our summer services run from June 25th through September 3rd, and these services are led by a variety of people, often by members of the congregation. I'm excited for today's worship, which is led by me, but mostly by some of our delegates who went to our Unitarian Universalist Association's General Assembly, which we'll talk more about, of course. So I am delighted to be joined by Erica Agnew, Marissa Volpe, and Danielle Van Dusen for today's service. Our regular church year begins on September 10th with our Water Communion in-gathering service. Let's take a moment now to greet one another. I invite you to take a moment of quiet now to center yourselves for the service.
Our opening words are from Reverend Justine Sullivan. A colleague from another faith once asked me, "Why would a humanist go to church?" I pondered this question for a moment, and what came to me was this: something happens when we gather. Something happens when we gather in all the many ways that we now gather. So, in gratitude for the divine spark that dwells within each of us and circulates between and among and all around us, we light this chalice. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, Woyaya.
You may be seated. So I've got a beautiful box, but I don't actually have anyone to open it. I wonder, I'm looking for a volunteer from the crowd to open our wonder box. Is anyone feeling curious? Yeah, Crystal. I wonder what's inside.
Oh.
Do you know what that is?
Looks like a name tag for General Assembly.
It is a name tag for General Assembly. Thank you so much. So this is actually, I threw away my name tag, so it's not my name tag, but it's Erica's name tag, Erica Agnew. And my favorite thing is that it's got this fun little animal on it, right? And at General Assembly, we all wore these pretty much all the time. And you can see at the bottom, some people had like a lot of ribbons. Erica went minimalist and just has a delegate ribbon, which is the most important of the ribbons. But some people had ribbons all the way down to the floor, because there are a lot of different ribbons you can get, and they mean a lot of different things. So for those of you who are thinking, I don't even know what this whole General Assembly thing is, that's what I'm here for, so don't worry. General Assembly is our annual gathering of Unitarian Universalists at a national level. So from all across the United States. And it is, the Unitarian Universalist Association is officially just the congregations of the United States, but we have relationships with congregations in Canada and around the world, so sometimes there are people from Canada and around the world as well. But the folks who are the General Assembly officially is delegates from congregations in the United States. This year, it happened both in person in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and online. And there were a variety of things that happened. It went on for 4.5 days. We did a lot of worship together. There were workshops, there were speakers, and there was business. There were 3-hour-long business meetings every day, which was fun, right? Totally. And anyone can attend General Assembly. It's not limited but it is only the delegates, so that's why that little ribbon is so important. Only the delegates from each congregation who get to vote. And each congregation gets delegates based on how many members they have. They also, if their minister is more than half-time, that person is automatically a delegate as well. And if their religious educator is more than half-time, that person is also automatically a delegate. So we had 7 delegates this year, 4 in person from the congregation, 1 online from the congregation, and then me and Sadie, who were also in person. And you'll hear from 3 of those folks later in the service. And every year at General Assembly, there are some particular themes that come up. And the biggest theme this year was change. It was in like every single worship service, they talked about change. And you can probably imagine part of why that is. There's been a lot of change in our world in the last, 4 to 20 years. And there also has been a lot of change in church. Particularly, a lot in the last 20 years, but also kind of even more rapidly because of the pandemic. And there are a lot of common challenges right now from that change. So we talked a lot about some of the challenges that congregations across the country are facing right now. And we also were talking about changing the core statements that we have about who we are as Unitarian Universalists. So some of you who have been around for a while or have at least taken my Intro to UU class might remember that we have a set of 7 principles. And those 7 principles are a statement that we have had since 1985, which is, I'm going to tell you, a long time. And so we're actually supposed to look at those statements every 10 years and decide if we still like them, if they're still right for us. And so we are doing that. We are looking at changing those 7 principles into a set of 7 core values. And also changing some other parts of that statement. So that was the biggest piece of business this year, was looking at the proposal for changes to that and deciding whether we wanted to keep talking about that proposal for another year. Because the way it works is we have to actually vote on the proposal at 2 consecutive General Assemblies for it to become, part of our bylaws, which is like, you don't usually think that the core statement about who you are is a bylaw change, but that's how it works in Unitarian Universalism. And so we talked about changing that core statement, and we're going to be talking a ton more about that all throughout this year. So don't worry if you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard of this before, I don't know what that means, I'm scared of change. Don't worry about it. We're going to talk about it a bunch this year. So we'll have more opportunities. Because we did in fact vote at General Assembly to continue that conversation. There were some amendments made to the proposal, and the delegates voted, I think it was more than 80%, to say, yes, we want to talk about this for another year and bring it back for a final vote next year. So we're going to be doing that here. Stay tuned for more. There were 2 other pieces of really important business that happened at this General Assembly. There was a business resolution that called for a divestment of our UU Common Endowment Fund from the fossil fuel industry. Now, a business resolution, in case you don't know, is a statement that makes a suggestion for how our Unitarian Universalist Association should run. Now, this was a really complex and emotional vote. It was probably one of the more emotional votes that I've ever been a part of at a General Assembly, and I've been to more than 10 of them, so I've been a part of a lot of votes. It was hard because everyone basically agreed that not supporting the fossil fuel industry was a good goal. I think we would probably agree in this room about that as well. But there were disagreements about how best to do that and whether to move forward with this business resolution. And ultimately, the delegates voted against the business resolution because there was a sense that this particular statement didn't feel like the right way forward. And of course, there were a lot of feelings about that vote as well. And finally, we elected a new president of our Unitarian Universalist Association. Just like in June, we elected a new president of our congregation. The Unitarian Universalist Association elects a new president every 6 years, and it has been the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray for the last 6 years. She's been amazing. We said goodbye to her at this GA. I think she's going to go rest a little bit, which is great. It's been a big 6 years. And we elected the Reverend Sophia Bettencourt, who is an amazing theologian and minister, and I'm really excited to see what she brings to our Unitarian Universalist Association. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from her as she settles into being president. So there you go. That's your 5-minute summary of what all of the things we did over 4.5 days at General Assembly. You're going to be hearing more from our delegates about the experience of GA. I'm here for the facts. They're here for the feelings. So you'll hear more about that in a little while. But for now, I have some wonderings for you. I wonder how much you feel connected to our larger Unitarian Universalist community. I wonder how it feels for you to think about Unitarian Universalists in other parts of the country. I wonder if you would ever be interested in going to a General Assembly. And I wonder what it is that you're still wondering about General Assembly.
Hello. To be honest, I was not sure how to talk about General Assembly, and parts of my experience of attending still feel very jumbled. I felt very privileged to be able to be there in person. Somewhat surprisingly, I found it at times to be overwhelming and awe-inducing. I have never been especially accustomed to large crowds and hadn't really been near one in years. I found myself immersed in Unitarian Universalism in a way I hadn't predicted. I spent a fair amount of time lying outside near the river, meditating or journaling. I don't pretend to be an enlightened or diligent journaler, so please don't mistake this for a humble brag. My first entry from the trip: I am manspreading on the bus. First impressions, I get it. I feel powerful. I mostly use my journal as an anchor when my mind is busy and a place to record things I want to remember to explore more. I hope this list of some journal highlights can serve as a way of summarizing GA from my point of view. I've edited out expletives and complete nonsense. First, GA day. More hectic than I realized, but good. Tears from the music. Cried when anybody talked or sang about freedom. Hope is another big tear-fueling theme. I've been thinking a lot about communion and vulnerability. There's something really moving and really hard about being among people I perceive to be liberated. Wishing I could share that with people who can't be here or wouldn't be here. Just want music and river noise. Why ever be indoors? Someone quoted Adrienne Rich, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save." Made me think, these do seem like the people to cast my lot with, those who seek to reconstitute the world, whether we're successful or not. First general session with the Article 2 amendments. A lot of reminders about peace and accountability. That politeness with festering or unspoken disharmony is not peaceful at all. Everybody here is nice and warm and extra courteous, like to the max, but there are so many people, so it feels a bit like a mega church, but very nice, very UU. Class inclusion workshop. People are yelling repeatedly at and about the Zoom, not very UU. Got a free fat liberation pin. Pins are life. Amani Perry, so amazing, especially the part about stratified belonging is the norm in our society. And she talked about anti-intellectualism being a way to squash empathy, to keep people from being moved deeply. Wow. Intense pro speeches for the business resolution about divestment from fossil fuel industry, asking important questions, tense, frustrating, powerful, grateful for all of it. Also, giving myself a gold star for being moved deeply, basically crying all the time now, have embraced it. The vote margins for actions of immediate witness are encouraging. Glad Cop City defenders are in the vast minority. Overall, I'm really glad that I approached General Assembly with few expectations. I deliberately avoided researching Pittsburgh or planning my travel obsessively, hoping that I could focus on being present and taking in whatever seemed most important in the present. That was a good move, just because of the sheer amount of content to digest from the services, workshops, and general sessions. I am definitely planning to attend next year, and I'm hopeful that even in a fully virtual format, it will provide another chance to learn and deepen my faith in this tradition, and probably have a few really good cries.
During one of the services during GA, a speaker, a member of an indigenous tribe native to the now called Pittsburgh area, spoke of the rivers flowing through the area. He said that the indigenous belief is that there are not 3 rivers, but 2, and that these 2 rivers flow into all other rivers and bodies of water across the globe. If someone shed a tear, say, in an island in the Pacific, it would flow all the way to these 2 rivers where we were now gathered. This was my second time attending GA, and the first time as an adult and as a delegate. As a teenager, when I went, I believe I was, oh boy, how many years is that? Must have been at least 6 years ago, I believe. while ago, I don't think I fully understood its processes and importance. After this year, I have gained more insight into the working of the UUA and wider UU community than I expected. After the final general session, which included the announcing of the negative divestment vote and the swearing in of Sophia, the new UUA president, the tension I had felt the past few days finally settled into somewhat of an understanding. As I left the convention center for the airport, I was struck by the potential I saw at GA. After hearing the passion of the delegates, speakers, and advocates, I was struck by what could be. The force that a progressive faith tradition such as this could truly be to the world. There was hope and passion, but also a simmering of disappointment and anger, and a sharp dissonance that I felt towards the current state of the UUA and my place within it. The representatives of the UUA board often spoke of financial responsibility and the passion of the authors of the business resolution, divestment resolution, and the wider divestment movement. Quoting the board members during their con statement during the discussion, this divestment, quote, would reduce our ability to advance our values in the world at a time when our collective voice is desperately needed. The UUA needs financial backing, yes, but what is our collective voice saying if our funds are supporting things that go against our values? As one of the co-authors of the resolution said during the discussion, we cannot resist the corporations we passively support through our endowment. The authors of the divestment resolution and the wider movement were often called passionate young adults who were highlighting the importance of the issue, especially when their proposed changes did not pass. After the discussion of the resolution, after the big discussion of the resolution, this was the fourth day, a group of supporters protested with signs and a prayer at the front of the stage. As they continued the call and response prayer, some delegates began to rise from their seats and join them at the front of the stage. This was a poignant and loud statement that I felt compelled to join. The two people standing next to me were older than me, probably over 60, as were many others who had joined up front. The warmth of the lights the camera team pointed at the demonstration, and the physical touches of solidarity of those up front starkly contrast the dismissive attitude often displayed towards the movement. Almost 33% of the delegates voted for this business resolution. As I'm sure we can all imagine, young adults did not make up a third of the delegates there. Instead, this third was made up of climate activists, supporters of reparations and equity, land-back activists, among many others, a group not defined by their age, but by their values. Young people are often climate activists, at least in my experience, in part because of the pervasiveness and knowledge of this issue. It's something they've never lived without. It's not some new idea that they're able to forget. Comfort around this issue is not an option when one has not lived outside of its shadow. Some have been advocates for this issue for decades and have been ignored just the same as these young people. The pleas and desperation of these young climate activists are the same pleas some have been shouting for over half a century. Financial and fiduciary responsibility are not insignificant, especially in such a big organization as the UUA, but financial responsibility endows financial power. A few of the testimonies, the speakers of the co-authors of the bill spoke of the reasons that they actually sponsored this bill in the first place. It was during a protest against the Line 3 pipeline. Line 3? Yeah, the Line 3 pipeline. And they'd been called for their church to join. And they were with other indigenous activists, water rights activists, everything you can imagine. And during that protest, there were many UUs arrested, and within that, the Enbridge, which is the company that actually was making the pipeline, spent $4.7 million in police, and activists there, including the two people that spoke, were tear gassed, pepper sprayed, and shot with rubber bullets, to the point where one of them was knocked unconscious. And it turns out that the UUA, they found out, had investments in Enbridge, the same company that had then shot them. Money is necessary to keep a large organization such as the UUA running. But if this monetary power is made in part on the backs of the marginalized for the monetary benefit of fossil fuel companies, is that truly fiscally responsible? Change is not always comfortable. Change in unequal systems cannot equalize uncomfortable feelings felt by some and the real harm and discrimination of others within that same system. Can the hurt perpetuated by words said to one another really equal the hurt perpetuated by monetary power in divestment discussions? People often disconnect monetary systems and other systems of marginalization, but these other systems so often dictate one's monetary status. Like the two rivers flowing around Pittsburgh, these complex systems flow into and fuel one another. The path a drop of water takes is not defined by one river, but by the ebb and flow of many bodies of water. Like you cannot separate a single river from this system, you cannot separate the complex systems that we live in and that our lives and identities are affected by. This idea of interconnectedness is in no way new, but it must extend to our real-life experiences. If we are all connected, the systems in which we live and that shape us and our identities must also be connected.
When asked to write a reflection about being a delegate at this year's General Assembly, my immediate reaction was no way, followed by a bit of panic. There was so much I experienced there, and not all of it sweet and inspirational and pretty, that 5 minutes will not cover it. And what if they don't like what I have to say, which in my mind was a distinct possibility? They might kick me out of the church, or at least I might get some side eye. So, but luckily, I often don't follow my first reaction. And after some reassurance from Reverend Allison, I decided to try to come up with something, both for you, the congregation, and for me. So thanks in advance for allowing me to share a bit about my experience. My trip to GA started in the airport on the way to Pittsburgh. One person whose voice carried was talking with a friend about GA, and slowly I and some other UUs on our flight gathered around talking about the event. I felt included and connected from the start. Because of that group, I was able to navigate from the Pittsburgh airport all the way to the convention center. I never saw that group of UUs again, but that was okay. The connection had been just what I needed at that moment. The first event I attended was the banner parade. As someone who gets overwhelmed in crowds, this was a lot. There were people everywhere trying to find their fellow congregants to get their banner in this parade. Despite my overwhelm, the idea of the banner parade was awe-inspiring. All of us together, just a fraction of each UU congregation, was probably the most massive amount of people I have ever seen in one space in my life. I was not prepared for the magnitude of people, but I was able to achieve an ideal balance of in-person and remote sessions from my hotel room. Luckily, in classic UU style, self-care was accommodated and encouraged. GA was also the longest amount of time I have spent outside of the roles I have as daughter, sister, aunt, partner, and therapist, probably ever. This trip allowed me to focus on me, my needs, and my connection with the church, something I didn't realize I needed so badly until I had the opportunity. The first thing that popped up to me was the intense amount of social justice issues I felt passionate about. Reverend Allison mentioned the little banners, and I was also minimalist, but I could have taken every single one because I care about them all. Now that my roles were not my focus, I got to ask myself, what do I stand for? What do I care about? I'm constantly fighting for others, being pretty much born with the personality of a social worker, but do I need fighting for too? Do I matter? I concluded that I did, and I attended a meeting of the UU Fat Liberation Group. I cried the entire meeting. Showing up for myself was so foreign to me, I still don't know what I felt. I'll let you know if and when I figure that out. Throughout my journey, I was acutely aware of my tasks as a delegate. To me, this meant attending all the business meetings, listening to the best of my ADHD ability, and voting my conscience. Now, I know no person or institution or church is perfect, but the business meetings were where my thoughts about the church, the leadership, and what the church stands for were the most challenged. One thing I saw during the business meetings was a significant division in terms of voting. I saw the dissenters to the majority were often ostracized by either delegates withholding clapping or making side comments to peers. Although it was stated that every opinion mattered and was respected, I didn't get the sense that minority views were respected and really listened to. And I felt that if I disagreed with the clear majority, I was really hesitant to say so. I also saw a division between the elder and younger church members. A follow-up email attempt to explain some of the tension in those business meetings that some of my peers have mentioned indicated that perhaps the youth and young adults don't trust the elders, and we should work to kind of build that trust, which is a great idea. But I actually think that the elders who don't trust the contributions of the younger generations. The desire is there, but putting it into action and practice has been more challenging in my observations. As someone who has worked almost my entire career with adolescents and young adults, I do think we have a lot more work to do to show that we take them seriously, consider their opinions and approaches, even if they're different from our years of experience or our ways of operating in the past. Anytime I have taken the opportunity to really listen to a teen and not tell them my perspective or explain myself, just really listen, I always come out a better person for doing so. Of course, the business items we were voting on were super important, and they did give me the opportunity to explore my opinions and the importance of representing the congregation. Even with my concerns and the internal conflict I had, as well as the external around GA, I still got to see the best of what UU can be. I got to see things that make this congregation so special to me, played out among so many others in the wider UUA. The desire to grow and change, the importance of our covenant, and the love that we have are what help keep me here. Thank you so much for those opportunities.